Anyway, so coming to Salamis in Cyprus, we preach the word of God in the synagogues of the Jews. Again, like some alien, people from outer space someplace. So if these people are not Jews, going into these synagogues to preach. This is definitely being written to a Greek audience, wouldn't you say? Because the Greek audience said, these are synagogues of the Jews. Well, there's nothing being written to Jews, because Jews would know synagogues. And you begin to see the antagonism here, so you see why people subconsciously develop this, what we now call anti-Semitism, from things of this kind. And I believe that a true Christian would not want to encourage this, given what happened, as we've said. Never mind. So he goes into the synagogues. Of course, we haven't had the Jerusalem conference here in Acts yet, but according to the letters that we just read, was he supposed to go into the synagogues? Was that the agreement? Was that the agreement? No, he wasn't supposed to go into the synagogues. Where's the first place he goes? How would you like someone like that in your movement, who you can't depend on to do what you have agreed to do, even according to his own testimony, if he in fact does this, and who runs his own game? I told you, that's something that causes a lot of people upset. If you're in someone's movement and you are stealing all the customers for your own movement, when you said you're not going to do that, and these people have, to some extent, been responsible for getting these associated people interested in the whole God idea in the first place, then you're running off, siphoning off a whole bunch of them for yourself. Well, that's going to get a lot of people upset. I wouldn't go into the Crystal Cathedral in Garden Grove with some of the ideas I have and not invited to talk there and just start talking and then try to grab as many people out of there for my own movement. If some people in that church got angry and beat me up, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. You can't just barge into places and take all the people who are, invited there for your own, well, maybe you think you can, but Paul thinks he can because he runs the race to win. He wants to win. Well, I'm sorry, but this guy, everything I see about him is consistent. I hate to be a bad person in this case, but I think Paul had a hand in the death of James too, so I'm not apologetic. I think he had a hand in the death of John the Baptist. Personally, that's my own personal view. I don't put that on you. I think he had a hand in the death of James, and I'll explain why when we get to that. But that's, I don't need to, that's not a course thing, that's a personal reason that I feel justified. One person in bringing this material out. So anyway, you are the verdict. You have to make your own decision. You make your own. Okay, so he goes to Salamis in Cyprus, and he meets Sergius Paulus, and there he has an accomplished meeting, as we already have seen, with Elymas the magician. Again, another of these magician, because Elymas means magician. In any case, he strikes him dead, and it's Elymas now who is the son of the devil and the enemy of all righteousness. Don't forget, in the Ebionite literature, Paul is the enemy. I think this is a version of an encounter with Simon Magus. And the reason I think it takes place in Cyprus, because often Simon Magus and his people are confused with Cypriots. You say, why are they confused with Cypriots? Because Samaria, among the Jews, were called Cutaeans. Samaria among the Jews were called, Samaria is where Simon Magus, by the way, comes from. That's based on this root kut or kit, and all these Western islands in the Mediterranean, as the Dead Sea Scrolls make clear, were called kit. It's this problem. In the scrolls, the enemies, if you've taken the scroll class, are the Kittim. We try to figure out who these enemies are. They're Western island people. It turns out they're either Greeks or Romans. Most people think they're Romans. But that's because originally Crete, Krita, for people who couldn't pronounce it, like Constantinople, Istanbul, drop off syllables in the pronunciation. Kitta was the name of places like Crete and Cyprus. And they got confused in translation with Samaritan because of the word kut for Samaritans. And that may not be correct, but that's a possibility I urge you to consider. Many of you. Anyway, next place he goes, he leaves to Pamphylia. And then he goes, this little notice, 13:1, and John left them and returned to Jerusalem. You see that? How many see that, 13:1? John. Who is John? Well, it turns out he's John Mark, the one whose house Peter went to leave a message for James, the mother of John Mark, having been called Mary in an earlier chapter, but he left them. Is there any information? I've told you this before, but is there any indication that there's a problem? Do you see that John is angry about something, or worked up about something, or he's done something, you know? Acts just notes how. Innocently, laconically, John left them and returned to Jerusalem. But after going through Pergia, they came to Antioch in Pisidia, another Antioch, and they went, guess where they went? Right to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and then they make this exhortation, this speech, and so on here. Very interesting speech. Well, I'll come to that speech probably next time, but let me go over to 15 now. I think I've done this before, but just so you make it clear. After the so-called Jerusalem Council in Acts 15, and we will get to the end of Acts in this class. This is where we're headed towards in this class, to read all of Acts. And that will what will be on the second exam, the reading of Acts. After James makes his judgments in Acts 15:18 at the Jerusalem Council, and these judgments are taken down in a letter by Judas and Silas to Antioch, Paul and Barnabas decide to go on another missionary journey according to 1536. 1537. Where do I drop there? Thanks a lot. And Barnabas wanted to take John Mark. So this refers back to 2 chapters previously, right? But Paul did not agree to take the one who had deserted their work in Pamphylia. So Paul is angry about something John Mark did, right? Is that, we all agree? But that wasn't stated previously, was it? We only get it here. And Barnabas took Mark and sailed off to Cyprus. And Paul chose Silas and left after being commended by the grace of God by the brothers, and went through Syria and Cilicia, making